The soft light of dusk filtered through the windows of my studio, creating a play of shadows and colors on the walls. The atmosphere was charged with emotion and expectation. I was just steps away from unveiling my first art exhibition. The canvases, covered in layers of paint and feelings, awaited eagerly to be revealed to the world. Deep down, a mix of anxiety and joy pulsed in my chest. As I organized one of the pieces, the door opened with a soft creak. I looked up and saw Mark, my boyfriend, entering with a wide smile and carrying a bouquet of vibrant flowers in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. "Surprise!" he exclaimed, as if he had brought the sun into my little refuge. "Mark, you didn't have to do this," I replied, an involuntary smile forming on my lips. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the air, and I couldn't help but feel warmed by the attention he was giving me. Of course I had to. A year together deserves to be celebrated, don't you think? He came closer and handed me the flowers, leaning in for a soft kiss on my cheek. "I'm so proud of you, Em. You've worked hard for this." "Thank you, love." I really poured my heart into every brushstroke. I glanced at the canvases and then back at him, feeling a wave of gratitude. It was hard to believe that it had already been a year since we met. Time flew by, and every moment with him felt like a new adventure. We sat down on the worn sofa in the corner of the studio, and Mark began sharing some funny stories about his work, our conversation flowing like a calm river. But soon, he mentioned a trip he took before we started dating. "Oh, do you remember that trip I took to California? It was amazing. I met some really interesting people there." "Yes, you mentioned it," I said, leaning forward, intrigued. "But you never told me much about what happened. What did you do there?" He hesitated for a moment, and I noticed a shadow pass over his gaze. "Oh, it was just some parties, you know how it is. I met some people, but nothing much." His response was too quick, as if he wanted to avoid the subject. "Right," I replied, but doubt began to form in my mind. What was he not telling me? "And how did you meet those people?" "Oh, just friends of friends. It's not worth going into details." He averted his gaze, and my heart began to race. I could feel that there was something more there, something he was hiding. The conversation continued, but the seed of unease had already been planted. Later, when I returned home, I decided it was time to capture a moment of us. I picked up his phone, which was on the table, and suggested we take a picture. "Let's take a selfie to remember this night," I proposed, smiling. But as I scrolled through the images, one photo caught my attention. It was a woman I didn't recognize, with a radiant smile and eyes that seemed to sparkle. That image left me troubled. "What was that?" "Mark, who is this woman?" I asked, unable to hide the unease in my voice. He quickly approached, his expression serious. "Let me see," he requested, taking the phone from me. The tension in the air was palpable, and my heart raced. Something inside me began to break, but I didn't yet know what it was. "What's going on, Em?" Mark questioned, but I could only think about the image, the subtlety of betrayal that was starting to form in my mind. What else was he hiding? The tension in the air was palpable as I stared at Mark, the photo of Sarah trembling slightly in my hands. The heat of my face betrayed the storm brewing inside me. He was there, eyes wide and a nervous expression, as if he knew the truth was about to be revealed. "Emily, calm down. It's just a friend from the past," he tried to justify, but his voice betrayed insecurity. "A friend from the past?" I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. If she's just a friend, why didn't you tell me about her before? And why have I never heard of Sarah? The questions poured out like a whirlwind, and I let them flow, not bothering to filter the anger and pain growing within me. Mark hesitated, looking at the floor as if the answers were hidden among the kitchen tiles. It was a phase of my life that I preferred to leave behind. "I didn't want to bring that weight into our relationship," he replied, but his words made no sense to me. I felt there was something deeper, a secret he was unwilling to share. "You can't just hide parts of your life from me. I'm your girlfriend, Mark. How can I trust you if you're not honest with me?" Frustration rose in my voice, and I found myself nearly shouting. The image of Sarah wouldn't leave my mind, and doubts began to multiply like shadows on a cloudy day. "Emily, I swear it's nothing. I don't have any more contact with her." It was a mistake I made years ago, Mark insisted, but the sincerity in his gaze began to waver. I could no longer distinguish truth from lie, and that terrified me even more. A mistake? And how many mistakes have you made, Mark? What else are you hiding from me? I was on the verge of exploding. The anger burned like a fire inside me. That moment felt like a turning point, and I wondered if I could take a step back, if I could look at him the same way after that conversation. You don't understand. I was lost back then. I didn't know what I wanted. He defended himself, but his words sounded empty. I didn't want to hear any more excuses. I wanted answers, a truth I could accept. Determined to find out more, I remembered David, Mark's friend. He always seemed to know more than he let on. I'm going to talk to David, I declared, determination taking over me. If you can't be honest with me, maybe he can. Mark turned pale, and his expression changed to concern. Emily, don't do that. David doesn't know everything, he warned, but I had already made my decision. The need to understand what was happening was stronger than any warning. That night, I could barely sleep. The images of Sarah and the moments I shared with Mark danced in my mind like ghosts. I needed clarity, a glimpse of the truth he was unwilling to give. The next morning, I decided to seek out David. Breakfast went by in a blur as I mentally prepared for what might come. When I arrived at the cafe where we used to meet, I was greeted by the strong aroma of fresh coffee and the familiar sight of David, who was sitting at a table, looking at his phone. Hi, Emily. How are you? He smiled, but I noticed a shadow in his eyes. Is everything okay? You seem a little disturbed. David, I need your help. It's about Mark. I found a picture of a woman on his phone, and I need to know what you know about it, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. David hesitated, and for a moment, the silence between us was deafening. Look, Emily, I don't know if this is a good idea. He started, but I wasn't willing to back down. Please, David. I can't live with this uncertainty. What do you know about Sarah? My gaze was pleading, and I needed him to see the sincerity in my words. He sighed, looking out the window as if searching for courage in the streets of New York. All right, but you need to understand that this could get complicated. My heart began to race as I encouraged him to continue. Whatever he had to say, I needed to hear it. The sun was setting in New York, casting a golden light over the city as I walked through the busy streets. My heart was in turmoil, and the image of the photo of Sarah still echoed in my mind like an incessant drumbeat. It was strange how a simple click could destabilize everything I believed about myself and about Mark. I needed a moment, a pause to breathe and reflect. Hi, Emily. A familiar voice pulled me back to reality. It was David, Mark's friend, who worked at a nearby cafe. He was approaching with a friendly smile, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to get involved in another conversation that could complicate things even further. Hi, David. How are you? I tried to smile, but the expression on my face probably didn't match my tone. You look different. Did something happen? He looked at me with concern. I hesitated, but the need to vent was greater. Actually, yes. I found a photo on Mark's phone of a woman named Sarah. David frowned, his expression changing rapidly. Oh no, Emily, you know Mark has a complicated past, right? Complicated? That's an understatement. He told me she was just a friend from the past, but the connection seems much deeper. I feel like I'm losing my sense of identity with all of this. He sat down next to me, and after a moment of silence, he said, sometimes the truth is more confusing than we'd like. But you need to protect yourself, Emily. Don't let his actions define who you are. His words resonated with me, and it took me a moment to process them. I just don't know what to do. I need some time to think about us, about what I really want. It's a tough decision, but sometimes stepping back is the first step to knowing how you truly feel. He looked at the art gallery across the street, and an idea sparked in my mind. I'm going to take a walk over there. I need inspiration, something to make me feel alive again. I stood up and gave David a shy smile. Thank you. You always know what to say. He nodded, and I headed toward the gallery, the bright lights illuminating my path. As soon as I entered, I was greeted by an explosion of colors and textures. The works were by local artists, and each seemed to tell a unique story, full of emotion and, in a way, pain. I was drawn to one painting in particular, a portrait of a woman looking toward the horizon, tears in her eyes, but a hopeful smile. While admiring the piece, a man approached. He had an intense look and an aura of confidence that made me feel at ease instantly. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he commented, looking at the painting. "Yes, it's very powerful. It reflects so much emotion." I turned to him, and he smiled. "I'm Alex, the artist. This piece speaks about the internal struggles we all face. Sometimes, pain is what pushes us to find our true identity." "You're right. I'm going through that right now." I found a picture on my boyfriend's phone, and everything fell apart. He watched me closely, as if trying to read my soul. Relationships can be complicated. But remember, the truth always comes to light. You need to ask yourself, do you love yourself enough to face this? His words resonated within me, like a call. Maybe I have lost myself seeking his approval, trying to be the perfect girlfriend. But what if I need to find out who I am on my own? Exactly. You're an artist, and the beauty of your art comes from your truth. He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Face your fears, Emily. Confront Mark. The truth may hurt, but it's the first step to finding yourself again. The conversation with Alex ignited a flame within me. I knew I needed to go back to Mark, but not to apologize or explain myself. I needed to demand answers, the truth he owed me. Clarity began to form in my mind, a path to follow amid the uncertainties. With a new purpose, I left the gallery, ready to face whatever came next. The room was silent, except for the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. With each beat, anxiety built up like a storm about to burst. I had decided it was time to confront Mark about the truth hiding behind the picture of Sarah. I looked at him, who was sitting across from me, his eyes fixed on me, but his expression was that of a man hiding something. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my courage. "Mark," I began, my voice trembling a bit. "I need to know the truth. Who is Sarah really? Why didn't you ever tell me about her before?" He hesitated, his gaze shifting to the floor. The silence dragged on, and the tension in the air was palpable. Finally, he lifted his head, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "Sarah, she was my girlfriend for years. We loved each other, but we broke up." "Broke up," I repeated, feeling a sharp pain in my chest. "Are you telling me that your story with her is just a period? That there's nothing more between you?" With each word I spoke, anger and sadness intertwined. Mark shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. "It's not how I wanted you to find out. I'm not comfortable discussing the details, Emily." "Details? You want me to believe that everything between you two boils down to a breakup? It's not just that. I saw the way you looked at that photo. There were more feelings there. There was history." My tone grew louder, and frustration bubbled inside me. "You don't understand. Things aren't as simple as you think. We had our issues, and that's why we ended it. I've changed, and you're the one I love now." He tried to convince me, but I couldn't allow myself to be swayed by his words. "Love? Is that what you call this?" "Just, I feel like a stranger in your life, Mark. You never told me about Sarah. You never let me into that side of you. What else are you hiding?" I was on the verge of tears, desolation overtaking me. "Please, don't do this. I didn't want to hurt you, but you need to understand that I'm not the same person I used to be. Sarah is part of my past, something I wish I could forget. I chose you, Emily. You mean everything to me." The pleading in his voice made me hesitate, but the pain of betrayal was still strong. "You can't just ignore the past, Mark. It shaped who you are today. And what am I? A consolation prize?" I could no longer hold back the tears. The truth was becoming unbearable. The tension between us escalated. He stepped closer, trying to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Emily, please. Don't do this. I don't want to lose you. You've already lost me." The words came out as a whisper, but echoed in my mind like a deafening scream. The air felt heavy, and I knew something inside me had broken irreparably. "No, it can't be like this. I can't let you go. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." The desperation in his voice was palpable, but I could no longer trust him. "And how are you going to fix this, Mark? You can't undo what's already been done. The trust one had in you has dissipated. I can't look at you without remembering Sarah, the lie you told me. I'm tired of living in the shadow of your past. Emily, I love you. I can't imagine my life without you. Please, don't end us." He looked visibly shaken, but the intensity of pain in my heart wouldn't let me back down. "I need time. To think, to feel, to find myself again." The words came out as a whisper, but the determination behind them was strong. I needed space, freedom to understand who I was without the influence of his past. I stood up, feeling the loneliness settle between us. His gaze followed my every movement, but I knew I had to go. I needed to explore not only my identity, but also what it meant to love and be loved without the shadows of the past. The door closed behind me with a click, and in that moment, I knew that the journey to rediscover myself was just beginning. The sunlight filtered through the windows of my studio, illuminating the blank canvases I had prepared for the new exhibition. It was a new beginning, a new phase that I was determined to explore. I picked up a palette of colors and let my mind wander as I mixed the shades. Each brushstroke I made was an attempt to express the confusion and pain I felt, but at the same time, a form of liberation. "Emily, you seem so distant," I heard Mark's voice, breaking my moment of concentration. I looked up and saw him standing in the doorway with an expression of concern mixed with hope. He had been trying to reach out to me in the past few days, but I was determined not to give in. "I'm just focused on my work," I replied, trying to maintain indifference in my voice. "That's what I need right now." Mark took a hesitant step inside, his eyes searching mine. "I know you're upset, but I really want to talk. Can we do that, please?" I paused, hesitating. What did I really want? Talking to him meant reopening wounds that I hadn't yet healed. "What do you want to discuss, Mark? What more could you tell me that I don't already know?" He took a deep breath as if preparing for battle. "About what happened between me and Sarah. You already told me you broke up because you didn't feel comfortable discussing it. Why would it be different now?" I said, cutting. "Because, Emily, I don't want to lose you. I messed up, and I really care about you. What we had was special, but I can't change the past. I can only promise that I'm here now." "Promises don't fix lies, Mark," I replied, feeling the anger start to bubble inside me. "You were dishonest, and that's not something I can simply ignore. How can I trust you again?" He moved closer, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I know it's not easy, but I'm trying. I don't want you to see me only as someone who hurt you. And how do you want me to see you? As a man who betrayed me?" The venom in my words was undeniable, but I needed him to understand the depth of my pain. I didn't know how to deal with all of this. "I was confused," he said, his voice trembling. "I just wanted to forget that period of my life. I never thought you would have to know." "That's not an excuse. That's just an attempt to absolve yourself of guilt," I said, feeling that each word was pushing me further away from him. "I can't just forget, Mark. I deserve more than that." He fell silent, the words failing to find their way. I remained quiet, watching him, as a wave of sadness and frustration washed over me. What he didn't understand was that while he was wrestling with his own demons, I was struggling to understand who I was without him. When I finally returned to my art, I realized I needed to transform this pain into something meaningful. The colors I chose expressed the turmoil within me, and each brushstroke was a cathartic release of feelings I didn't know I still carried. The day passed slowly, and when night fell, I was exhausted but relieved. As I cleaned my palette, I heard a knock on the door. It was David. He looked tense, and I immediately sensed that something was wrong. "Emily, I need to talk to you." "It's about Mark and Sarah," he said, his voice low and urgent. My heart raced. What else could be revealed? "David, I don't know if I'm ready for this," I replied, trying to ignore the feeling that a new storm was about to form. "You need to know. I can't stay silent. There are things that haven't been said, and you deserve to hear the truth. Please, listen to me," he pleaded, and I realized there was no escaping it. "All right, come in," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I was ready to confront whatever it was, even if it meant reopening new wounds. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The tension in the air was palpable as David sat across from me, his eyes red and nervous. The atmosphere of the cafe we were in, with its walls covered in modern art and the strong smell of fresh coffee, felt like a cruel contrast to the whirlwind of emotions stirring inside me. "Emily, I don't know how to tell you this, but you need to know the truth about Mark," he began, his voice trembling. "About what exactly? What else could he be hiding?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but feeling my heart race. David hesitated, the words seeming heavy in his throat. "He didn't just cheat on Sarah, but he was with another woman while he was dating you." The impact of his words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "What? How do you know this?" My mind raced, recalling every moment I spent with Mark, every promise he made. David looked down, as if the weight of the truth was crushing him. "I saw messages, Emily. It wasn't just a fling, it was something real. He never wanted you to know. He was with this woman for months." "That can't be true," I shouted, catching the attention of some customers at nearby tables. "Mark told me it was all in the past, that he had changed. How could he be so dishonest?" My hands trembled, and I pressed them against the table, trying to find some stability amid the chaos forming in my mind. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I didn't want you to find out like this, but you deserve to know the truth before moving on. I just can't understand how he managed to hide behind so many lies for so long," David replied, his voice low but intense. "Thank you for telling me, David. I need to go. I need to see Mark." I stood up abruptly, the fresh air of the street hitting me like a wave. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink, but this didn't bring comfort. In fact, everything felt like an illusion, a painting fading in front of the reality I was about to face. As I entered the gallery, I felt my heart pounding. The opening of my new exhibition was about to begin, and the celebratory atmosphere felt ironic. People gathered around the artworks, admiring every detail, while I felt like a stranger in my own space. Mark was there, his charismatic presence lighting up the room, but now it was as if a shadow followed him. "Emily." He came toward me, a wide smile on his face. "You look amazing. I'm so proud of you." But instead of returning the smile, I stared at him, rage boiling inside me. "We need to talk, Mark. Now." The music and chatter of the party faded as I approached him, and all eyes seemed to turn toward us. "About what, love?" he asked, confused but still trying to maintain his composure. "About the truth. About Sarah. About the other woman," I said, each word coming out with a sharp clarity. "I know everything, Mark. I know you cheated on me." His expression changed drastically, and I saw panic grow in his eyes. "Emily, no. That's not what you think. I can explain." He stepped forward, but I interrupted him, raising my hand. "No, Mark. There's no explanation that can justify this. I trusted you, and you broke that trust." The people around us were attentive, whispering to one another as the tension rose. I felt the adrenaline coursing through my veins. It was time to expose the truth. Mark didn't just cheat on Sarah, but he also cheated on me while he was with me. He lived a lie, and I can't be a part of this anymore. My tone was firm, and I realized the words were resonating beyond me, echoing in the minds of everyone present. "That's not true, Emily. I love you." Mark tried to defend himself, but the truth was there, laid bare, and I wouldn't let him hide behind empty words. "Love? You don't know what that means. I am no longer a piece in your game, Mark. I am Emily, and I deserve more than this." The crowd seemed to be in shock, but I felt the strength rising within me, a strength I didn't know I possessed. "I refuse to be a victim of your lies. I'm freeing myself from you and your betrayal. Thank you, but I will no longer accept crumbs of love." With those words, the weight I carried began to dissipate, and a new light seemed to shine within me, illuminating a path to freedom. As he tried to defend himself, I turned my back, leaving the gallery and the life I built alongside him. Now, I was ready to reinvent myself, to rediscover my identity lost amid so much pain and betrayal. And so, with each step I took, I felt as if I were getting closer to finding myself.